The dinner party was a masterpiece of domestic perfection. The roast was tender, the wine was a vintage red, and the laughter between Lucas, his wife Olivia, and his best friend Mark filled the dining room with warmth. But then came the silence. A split second, where eyes lingered too long. A hand brushed a shoulder with a familiarity that transcended friendship, and the air suddenly grew heavy with a secret that shouldn't exist. Lucas saw it in the reflection of the patio door, a ghost of betrayal that shattered his reality before a single word was spoken. If the quiet unraveling of a perfect life intrigues you, and you want to see what happens when the silence finally breaks, stay with me. The rain in Seattle didn't fall. It hovered, a gray mist that clung to the windows of the Bennett residence like a second skin. Inside, the dining room was warm, smelling of roasted rosemary chicken and expensive Cabernet. To an outsider, it was a tableau of suburban success. Lucas at the head of the table, his wife Olivia to his right, and his best friend Mark across from her. "You should have seen the look on the client's face," Mark said, leaning back in his chair, swirling his wine. He realized he'd been betting on the wrong horse the whole time. Olivia laughed, a sound that used to remind Lucas of wind chimes, but tonight sounded strangely brittle. "That sounds just like you, Mark. Always the one to point out the obvious when it's too late." Lucas smiled politely, slicing a piece of chicken for his 5-year-old son, Leo, who was currently pushing peas around his plate. "Eat, Leo," Lucas murmured, his voice steady. But his mind was elsewhere. For the last hour, he had felt a strange frequency in the room, a hum of static electricity that pricked at the back of his neck. It wasn't what they were saying, it was the rhythm of it. Mark would speak, and Olivia's eyes would lock onto him a fraction of a second too fast. When Mark made a joke, Olivia's laughter lasted a beat too long. Lucas reached for the water pitcher at the center of the table. At the same moment, Olivia reached for the salt. Their hands didn't touch, but Lucas saw it. The way her eyes didn't look at the salt shaker. She was looking at Mark, and Mark was looking at her mouth. It was microscopic. If Lucas had blinked, he would have missed it. But he didn't blink. He saw the slight dilation of Mark's pupils, the way Olivia's lips parted just slightly, an unconscious invitation that had no place at a family dinner table. "Lucas?" Olivia's voice broke through the haze. "You okay? You've been staring at the centerpiece for a minute." Lucas snapped his attention back. He forced the corners of his mouth up. "Just thinking about the structural load on that new project downtown. Sorry." "Always working," Mark teased, taking a sip of wine. "You need to loosen up, man. Olivia was just telling me you've been spending late nights at the firm." Lucas felt a cold drop of dread slide down his spine. He hadn't told Olivia he was working late. He had told her he was stopping by his mother's nursing home. "Right," Lucas said, his voice flat. "Work." He looked at his wife. She was beautiful, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders, wearing the silk blouse he had bought her for their anniversary. She looked perfect. She looked like a liar. Under the table, Lucas shifted his leg. His foot bumped against something solid. He assumed it was the table leg, but then the object moved. He froze. He kept his face neutral, masquerading as the attentive host, and slowly, imperceptibly, lowered his gaze to the reflection in the sliding glass door that led to the patio. The interior lighting turned the glass into a mirror against the dark night outside. In the reflection, the scene was distorted but clear enough. Mark's hand was resting on the chair, not his own, but Olivia's. His fingers were tracing the fabric of her skirt, dangerously high on her thigh. Olivia wasn't pulling away. Her hand was resting on top of his, her fingers interlaced with the man who had been the best man at their wedding. The world didn't stop. The clock on the mantel continued to tick. Leo dropped his fork with a clang. The rain continued to mist against the glass, but inside Lucas, the foundation of his life, 10 years of marriage, friendship, trust, cracked with the violence of a demolition charge. He didn't flip the table. He didn't scream. He simply picked up his wine glass, the stem cool against his burning fingertips, and took a slow, deliberate sip. The wine tasted like vinegar. "So," Lucas said, his voice terrifyingly calm, cutting through the comfortable silence. "Mark, how long are you staying in town this time?" Mark smiled, that charming, boyish grin that Lucas used to admire. "As long as it takes, buddy. As long as it takes." Lucas nodded. He looked at his wife, who was now busy wiping Leo's mouth, the picture of maternal devotion. "I'm going to take everything," Lucas thought, the thought forming with crystal clarity. "I don't know when, and I don't know how yet, but I am going to take the kids, and I am going to leave you with nothing but him." "More wine?" Lucas asked. "Please," Olivia said, smiling at him. Lucas poured. He didn't spill a drop. The front door clicked shut, severing the connection between the warmth of the house and the damp Seattle night. Mark's taillights faded down the driveway, two red eyes blinking into the darkness before disappearing around the bend. "God, I'm exhausted," Olivia sighed, leaning back against the foyer wall. She brought a hand to her neck, massaging the spot where her pulse beat beneath the skin, the same spot Lucas had seen Mark's eyes linger on an hour ago. "He's a lot of energy, isn't he? Always on." "He's my best friend," Lucas said. The words tasted like ash, but his voice was a masterpiece of neutrality. "He's always been like that." "I think I'm going to take a shower and head straight to bed," she said, pushing off the wall. She walked past him, her arm brushing his ribcage. It was a casual, practiced intimacy that made Lucas's stomach turn. "Don't stay up too late working, okay?" "I won't. Just checking a few emails." He waited until he heard the heavy thud of the master bedroom door upstairs, followed by the distant, rushing sound of the shower pipes groaning to life. The house settled into a heavy silence, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the pounding of Lucas's own heart. He didn't go to his study. Instead, he walked into the living room, where Olivia had left her iPad charging on the side table. It was the family tablet, technically, used for recipes, streaming cartoons for the kids, and ordering groceries. But lately, Olivia had been protective of it, claiming Leo was downloading too many games. Lucas sat on the sofa, the leather creaking beneath him. He picked up the device. The screen illuminated his face in a ghostly blue light. Passcode 0812, their anniversary. It unlocked. He didn't look at the messages first. That would be too obvious, and Olivia was smart. She wouldn't leave a trail in the standard messaging app. He went to the photos. Thousands of images of the kids, the house, food, the gallery. Nothing. He felt a momentary wave of doubt. Maybe the reflection had been a trick of the light. Maybe he was the crazy one. Then he saw it. A folder labeled Inspiration Renovations. It seemed innocuous. Olivia was always talking about redoing the guest bath. But the thumbnail wasn't a tile sample or a paint swatch. It was a landscape photo, a view of the city skyline from a balcony. Lucas tapped it. The folder opened, and his breath hitched in his throat. There were hundreds of photos. They weren't of bathrooms, they were of them. There was a selfie of Olivia and Mark at a coffee shop in Pioneer Square, dated 3 months ago, a day Olivia said she was at a curator's conference. Their heads were pressed together, Mark's lips against her temple. There was a video. Lucas's hand trembled as he pressed play. The camera was shaky, set up on a dashboard of a car. Mark was driving. Olivia was in the passenger seat, singing along to the radio, her hand resting high on Mark's thigh. They looked happy. Not the polite, performative happiness they displayed at dinner, but a raw, electric joy that Lucas hadn't seen in his wife's eyes in years. He scrolled further back, 6 months, 8 months, and then a screenshot of a text message exchange. Mark, he's a good guy, Liv. I feel like dirt. Olivia, he's a good guy, but he's boring. He's structure, Mark. You're the life. I feel like I'm suffocating in this house until I see you. The words, he's structure, hit Lucas harder than any physical blow. He was the foundation she walked on, the walls that sheltered her, and she despised him for it. She didn't just want Mark. She was mocking the life Lucas had built for them. The shower water upstairs stopped. Lucas's instincts, honed by years of managing complex engineering crises, took over. He didn't smash the iPad. He didn't delete the folder. He pulled his phone from his pocket and began taking high-resolution photos of the screen. He captured the dates, the timestamps, the damning intimacy of the renovations folder. He moved with the cold precision of a surgeon, documenting the necrosis of his marriage. By the time he heard the bedroom door open upstairs, the iPad was back on the side table, exactly as she had left it. Lucas sat in the dark for a long time, listening to the house settle. He thought about Leo and Sophie sleeping in their rooms down the hall. He thought about the boring structure he provided, the college funds, the health insurance, the safe car, the warm beds. He stood up and walked up the stairs. When he entered the bedroom, the lights were off. Olivia was curled on her side, breathing deeply, feigning sleep, or perhaps actually sleeping the sleep of the guiltless. She smelled of vanilla body wash, a scent Lucas used to associate with home, now recontextualized as a costume she wore to hide the scent of another man. Lucas stripped off his clothes in the dark and slid into the bed. He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling, maintaining a strict 6 inches of distance between his body and hers. He was no longer her husband. He was a spy in enemy territory. And the war had just begun. The drive to Lake Chelan was a 3-hour exercise in torture. The Subaru was packed with floaties, coolers, and the chatter of Leo and Sophie in the back seat, excited for a week of swimming and s'mores. In the passenger seat, Olivia wore oversized sunglasses and scrolled through her phone, occasionally lifting it to snap a picture of the passing scenery or a selfie that cropped Lucas out of the frame. "Look at the water, Leo," Olivia said, her voice bright and airy, turning to face the back. "Isn't it blue?" Lucas gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. He knew exactly who those photos were for. They weren't for Instagram. They were for Mark. She was documenting her boring family obligation to feed the narrative that she was a martyr stuck in a loveless marriage, just waiting to be rescued by her exciting lover. When they arrived at the rental cabin, a rustic A-frame nestled among the pines. The air smelled of dry needles and lake water. It should have been paradise. Instead, to Lucas, it felt like a stage set for a play he no longer wanted to be in. For the next 2 days, Lucas watched his wife with the detached scrutiny of a forensic analyst. He noticed how she took her phone into the bathroom every time she went. He noticed the way she flinched when he walked into a room unexpectedly. On the 3rd afternoon, the sun was blazing overhead. Lucas sat on the deck, watching Sophie attempt a cartwheel on the grass, while Leo built a fortress out of pine cones. Olivia sat in a lounge chair 10 feet away, a book open on her lap. She hadn't turned a page in 40 minutes. Her phone buzzed on the small table between them. Lucas saw the screen light up. It wasn't a name, it was just a single letter. M's. Olivia's hand shot out, snatching the device with the reflexes of a cornered animal. She glanced at Lucas, her eyes wide for a fraction of a second before she masked it with a casual smile. "Just the gallery," she said, though Lucas hadn't asked. "They're having an issue with the shipping for the new exhibit. I should probably take this inside. The glare out here makes it hard to read." "Go ahead," Lucas said. He didn't look up from his children. "Take your time." She stood up and walked into the cabin, sliding the glass door shut behind her. Lucas watched her silhouette retreat into the shadows of the living room. He knew she wasn't calling a shipping company. She was calling him. She was whispering words of longing to the man who had sat at their dinner table and eaten their food. Sophie ran up to the deck, breathless and grinning. "Daddy, did you see? I almost did it perfectly." Lucas looked at his daughter, her innocent eyes, her complete trust in the world he had built for her. A wave of fierce, protective agony washed over him. If he left Olivia, this innocence would be the collateral damage. But if he stayed, he would be teaching his daughter that love was a lie and that betrayal was acceptable. He reached out and brushed a strand of hair from Sophie's forehead. "I saw, honey. You're getting so strong." "Mommy didn't see," Sophie said, glancing at the empty chair. "Mommy's busy," Lucas said, the words heavy and final. "But I'm watching. I'm always watching." That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed of the rental cabin, the silence was deafening. Olivia slept with her back to him, as far to the edge of the mattress as gravity allowed. Lucas lay awake, listening to the wind and the trees. He imagined the life she wanted, the thrill, the secrecy, the chaos with Mark. She wanted to be free of the structure. "Fine," Lucas thought, staring into the dark. "You want freedom? I'll give it to you." He mentally reviewed the checklist he had created in his head. The bank accounts were monitored. The evidence was backed up on a cloud server she couldn't access. The lawyer had the draft of the petition ready to file. He turned his head to look at the back of her neck. He felt no desire, no anger, only a cold, hollow resolve. This was the last vacation they would ever take as a family. This was the last time she would sleep under the same roof as her children without knowing that her world was about to end. He closed his eyes, not to sleep, but to rehearse. He needed to be perfect. For Leo, for Sophie, for the man he used to be before she broke him. The lie was elegant in its simplicity. Olivia stood by the front door, her overnight bag packed with lingerie Lucas had never seen, claiming she was heading to Napa for a detox weekend with her college sorority sisters. She checked her makeup in the hallway mirror, adjusting a stray curl, looking vibrant and alive in a way that twisted a knife into Lucas's gut. "I'll probably have terrible reception," she said, turning to kiss Lucas on the cheek. Her lips were dry, her touch perfunctory. "Don't worry if I don't text right away. We're supposed to be unplugging." "Unplugging," Lucas repeated, his voice devoid of inflection. "Sounds like exactly what you need. Have a good time, Olivia." "Love you," she said, the words automatic, meaningless reflexes. "Goodbye," he replied. He didn't say "I love you." He watched from the window as her car disappeared down the street. He waited exactly 10 minutes to ensure she wouldn't realize she forgot a charger and double back. When the 10 minutes were up, The paralysis that had gripped him for weeks evaporated. Lucas turned to the living room and pulled his phone out. He dialed a number. "You can come now," he said. Within the hour, a discreet moving van backed into the driveway. Lucas had planned this with the precision of a structural demolition. He wasn't taking the sofas or the dining table or the expensive art Olivia had curated. He was taking the soul of the house. He went to Leo's room first. He packed the clothes, the toys, the bedsheets that smelled like lavender detergent. He stripped the room until it looked like a guest room in a hotel. Impersonal, cold. He did the same for Sophie. He moved with a terrifying efficiency, folding shirts and boxing Lego sets, erasing the footprint of his children from the home that was no longer safe for them. When the kids asked what was happening, Lucas was ready. "We're going on an adventure," he told them, his voice steady and reassuring. "We're going to stay at a new place closer to the park. It's a surprise." Leo, trusting his father implicitly, helped carry his backpack. Sophie held her stuffed rabbit, sensing the gravity in the air but not understanding the cause. The hardest part was the master bedroom. Lucas packed his suits, his books, his watch collection. He opened the jewelry box on the dresser, the one containing the diamond earrings he bought her for her 30th, the pearl necklace from their wedding day. He left them. They were props for a wife who didn't exist. He walked through the hallway, taking down every family photo. The graduation pictures, the baby photos, the candid shot of the four of them on the beach. He didn't pack them all. He took the ones of the children and himself. The ones with Olivia, he left stacked on the floor facing the wall, like discarded scenery. By 4 p.m. the house echoed. It was still fully furnished. The leather couches, the oak table, the 60-inch television, but it was dead. The noise, the mess, the warmth of the family were currently sitting in the back of a van headed to a new apartment across the city. Lucas did one final sweep. He walked into the kitchen. On the pristine granite island, where they had eaten breakfast that morning, he placed 2 items. The first was his wedding ring. The second was a printed envelope. Inside was not a letter, but a legal petition for divorce and an emergency custody order granting him temporary sole guardianship based on evidence of negligence and moral endangerment. He didn't write a note. There was nothing left to say that the empty walls wouldn't scream at her the moment she walked in. He picked up Leo and Sophie, buckled them into his car, and backed out of the driveway. He didn't look back at the house. The structure was still standing, but the home had collapsed. As he drove onto the freeway, merging into the traffic leaving Seattle, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Olivia. "Made it to the hotel. So gorgeous here. Miss you guys already." Lucas handed his phone to Sophie in the back seat. "Sweetie, can you hold this? Don't press anything." He drove in silence for miles, the city skyline retreating in the rearview mirror. He was homeless, in a sense. But for the first time in months, he could breathe. He had taken the most valuable things in that house. And he had left Olivia with exactly what she had chosen. Her freedom and absolutely nothing else. Olivia pulled her car into the driveway just as the Sunday afternoon sun began to bleed into a bruised purple horizon. She felt radiant. The weekend with Mark had been everything she had craved. Champagne on a private balcony, whispered promises that made her feel 22 again, and the thrill of being desired not as a mother or a wife, but as a woman. She checked her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her skin was glowing. She practiced the lie she would tell Lucas. "The spa was amazing. The yoga really cleared my head. I missed you guys." She unlocked the front door and stepped in. "Honey, I'm home. Sorry I'm a bit late. Traffic on I-5 was a nightmare." She waited for the thundering footsteps of Leo or the rhythmic squeak of Sophie's shoes. She waited for Lucas's baritone voice from the kitchen asking about dinner. She was met with a silence so profound, it felt physical. It wasn't the quiet of a napping house. It was the vacuum of an abandoned one. "Lucas?" She dropped her keys in the bowl by the door. The sound rang out like a gunshot, sharp and jarring. Frowning, she walked into the living room. The furniture was there, but the room looked wrong. It took her a moment to process why. The walls. The hallway walls were dotted with pale rectangles where the frames used to hang. The gallery of their life, Sophie's first steps, the trip to Disneyland, the Christmas portraits, had been stripped away, leaving only the ghost of unpainted plaster behind. A cold prickle of fear started at the base of her neck. "Leo? Sophie?" She ran up the stairs, her heels clacking loudly on the hardwood. She threw open Leo's door. The bed was stripped to the mattress. The shelves that held his Lego creations were bare. The closet door stood open, revealing empty hangers swaying slightly in the draft. Panic, hot and acidic, rose in her throat. She ran to Sophie's room, empty. "Lucas!" she screamed, the name tearing out of her throat. She sprinted down to the kitchen, her mind racing through the worst possibilities: kidnapping, fire, emergency. Then she saw the island. The granite countertop was spotless, wiped clean of crumbs and clutter. In the center sat two objects. The gold band of Lucas's wedding ring caught the fading light, dull and heavy. Beside it lay the thick white envelope. Olivia walked toward it slowly, her legs feeling like they were moving through water. She picked up the ring first. It was cold. She dropped it as if it burned her skin and ripped open the envelope. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Emergency ex parte order for sole custody. Her eyes scanned the legal jargon, blurring until they snagged on a phrase in the second paragraph. Irrefutable evidence of ongoing extramarital affair and child neglect. "No," she whispered. "No, he doesn't know. He can't." She scrambled for her phone, her fingers trembling so hard she dropped it once before dialing Lucas. "The number you have reached is not accepting calls at this time." Blocked. She dialed the house landline. It rang in the kitchen right next to her, a shrill, mocking sound that echoed through the empty house. She stood there, breathing hard, the silence closing in on her. The house wasn't just empty. It was judging her. Every stripped wall and cleared surface was a testament to Lucas's efficiency. He hadn't just left. He had erased her. She needed to fix this. She needed someone to tell her she was right, that Lucas was overreacting, that he was the villain for taking her babies. She dialed Mark. He answered on the second ring, his voice low and intimate. "Hey, beautiful. Missing me already?" "He knows," Olivia gasped, sliding down to the floor, her back against the dishwasher. "Mark, he knows everything. He took the kids. He emptied the house." There was a pause on the other end, a pause that lasted too long. "What do you mean he took the kids?" Mark's voice had changed. The seduction was gone, replaced by a guarded, sharp edge. "Like. Legally? He filed papers. He has photos, Mark. He knows about us." She began to sob, a raw, ugly sound. "I'm all alone here. You have to come over. I don't know what to do." "Whoa, Liv, slow down," Mark said. She could hear the background noise of a sports game on TV. He was back in his apartment, back to his bachelor life. "If he has lawyers involved, Maybe me coming there isn't the best idea right now. It could make things worse for you. Olivia froze. The tears stopped instantly, replaced by a cold shock. What? I mean, if he's watching the house, we need to be smart, Mark stammered. Just talk to a lawyer. Let things cool down. I'll call you later, okay? The line went dead. Olivia pulled the phone away from her ear and stared at the black screen. The kitchen was dark now. She sat on the floor of her perfect, empty house, clutching the divorce papers, realizing that the freedom she had chased was not a liberation. It was an exile. Time did not heal all wounds, but it certainly scarified them into something stronger. 5 years later, the morning sun hit the kitchen counter of Lucas's townhouse in a way that didn't highlight dust, but rather the comfortable clutter of a life well lived. There was a stack of college brochures for Sophie, now 17, and a muddy pair of soccer cleats belonging to 10-year-old Leo. Lucas flipped a pancake with a practiced flick of his wrist. He was 42 now, and the years showed in the silver threading through his temples and the deepening lines around his eyes. But he looked lighter. The tension that used to carry his shoulders up toward his ears was gone. "Dad, did you sign the permission slip?" Sophie asked, breezing into the kitchen. She was taller, sharper, her eyes possessing a wisdom that came from weathering a broken home with grace. "On the counter, under your keys," Lucas said, sliding the pancake onto a plate. "Leo, breakfast! Boots off the hardwood!" Leo thundered down the stairs, ignoring the command about the boots. "Coach says I'm starting forward on Saturday." "That's great, buddy," Lucas smiled, pouring orange juice. "I'll be there. I cleared my schedule." This was the rhythm Lucas had built from the rubble. It wasn't perfect. There were days of exhaustion, financial tightness, and the lingering loneliness of a bed slept in alone. But it was honest. There were no secrets here. No shadows in the reflection of the glass. Across the city, in a third-floor apartment that smelled faintly of stale beer and expensive cologne, Olivia woke up to a cold, empty space beside her. The apartment was trendy but small, the kind of place two 20-year-olds would find romantic, but two 40-year-olds found suffocating. The freedom she had chased had curdled into a cramped reality of shared expenses and thin walls. She walked into the living room. Mark was there, asleep on the couch, still wearing his dress shirt from the night before. His phone was buzzing on the coffee table. Olivia looked at him. The charm that had once intoxicated her had eroded, revealing the immaturity beneath. Mark wasn't a structural engineer of a life. He was a demolitionist who got bored once the dust settled. She looked at the phone. A message flashed on the lock screen. "Jessica, Jim. Last night was fun. Same time Tuesday?" Olivia didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She felt a dry, bitter laugh catch in her throat. It was a cosmic joke, tailored specifically for her. She had left a man who worshipped the ground she walked on because he was boring and predictable, only to end up with a man who found her boring and predictable the moment the thrill of the affair wore off. Mark stirred, opening one bleary eye. "Liv? What time is it?" "Time for you to shower," she said, her voice hollow. "You smell like a bar." "Get off my back," Mark grumbled, rolling over. "You sound just like your ex." The comparison hit her like a physical slap. She stood in the center of the room, surrounded by IKEA furniture that wasn't hers, holding a coffee cup that was chipped. She thought about Lucas. She hadn't been allowed to see the kids in 3 weeks because Mark had forgotten to pay the car insurance, and she couldn't drive. She missed Sophie's laugh. She missed the smell of Leo's hair. She missed the security of a man who kept his promises. She walked to the window and looked out at the gray Seattle skyline. She was free, technically. She was with the exciting lover she had risked everything for, and she had never been more alone in her entire life. In the townhouse, Lucas laughed at something Leo said, the sound rich and genuine. In the apartment, Olivia listened to the silence of a man who wouldn't wake up for her. The scales of karma had balanced, and the weight was crushing her. The high school gymnasium smelled of floor wax and stale popcorn, a scent that triggered a cascade of memories for Olivia. School plays, basketball games, the mundane milestones of parenthood she had once found tedious. Now, standing near the back of the bleachers, clutching a program so tightly the edges were damp, she would have given anything to be bored again. She was alone. Mark had promised to come. He had said all the right things yesterday, but this morning there was a headache, a vague excuse about a deadline, and the cold reality that he simply didn't care about a daughter that wasn't his. Olivia had driven herself, parking her aging sedan between two luxury SUVs, checking her makeup 3 times to hide the fine lines that stress and regret had etched around her mouth. The band struck up Pomp and Circumstance. The crowd rose, and there they were. It wasn't hard to find them. Lucas had always commanded a room, not with noise, but with a quiet, grounded presence. He stood near the front row, wearing a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly. He looked older. Yes, his hair was more salt than pepper now, but he looked distinguished. He looked like a man who had weathered a storm and rebuilt the house with stone instead of wood. Next to him stood Leo. The little boy who used to build pinecone forts was now a 15-year-old giant, towering over his father, his shoulders broad, his jawline sharp. He was laughing at something Lucas whispered, a shared inside joke that Olivia would never understand. Then Sophie walked in. Olivia's breath hitched. Her daughter was radiant in the royal blue gown, her face flushed with excitement. She looked confident. She looked happy. She looked whole. For years, Olivia had told herself a comforting lie. They're damaged without me. They need their mother. Lucas can't do it alone. But as she watched Lucas snap a photo, his face glowing with unadulterated pride, and saw Sophie blow a kiss toward her father and brother, the lie disintegrated. They weren't damaged. They were thriving. They hadn't just survived her abandonment. They had grown around the hole she left until it was no longer a wound, but just a scar they rarely thought about. Olivia felt a gaze on her. She turned her head slightly. Lucas had turned around. Across the sea of bobbing heads and camera phones, his eyes found hers. She braced herself for anger. She expected a scowl, a glare, something that acknowledged the pain she had caused. She wanted him to hate her, because hate was a connection. Hate meant she still mattered. But Lucas didn't glare. He simply nodded. It was a polite, brief nod, the kind you give to a distant acquaintance or a former colleague you barely remember. Then he turned back to his children, his attention returning to the people who actually mattered in his world. That indifference broke her more than any scream could have. The ceremony blurred into a montage of applause and speeches. Olivia sat frozen, feeling the physical distance between her seat in the rafters and their seats on the floor as a chasm she could never cross. When the caps were thrown into the air, the room erupted in chaos. Families swarmed the floor. Olivia stood up, her legs shaky. She wanted to go down there. She wanted to hug Sophie. But she saw Leo wrap his arms around his sister, lifting her off the ground. She saw Lucas pull them both into a crushing embrace, the 3 of them forming a tight, impenetrable triangle. There was no space in that geometry for her. She lowered her gaze to her purse, checking her phone. No texts from Mark. No, how's it going? No support. Olivia looked back at the floor one last time. They were taking a selfie now, the three of them grinning, the flash illuminating their joy. She turned and walked toward the exit, pushing against the flow of happy parents streaming in, the only person walking away from the celebration. She had sought a life of passion and excitement, and she had found it. But standing in the hallway, listening to the muffled cheers of the family she threw away, she realized the price of that excitement was a lifetime of watching from the cheap seats. The parking lot was clearing out. Red taillights streamed toward the exit like a river of rubies in the deepening twilight. Olivia leaned against the hood of her sedan, arms crossed against the evening chill. She had seen Lucas walking toward his SUV, his suit jacket slung casually over one shoulder, keys swinging from his finger. He wasn't alone. Leo and Sophie were already in the car, the engine idling. Lucas was loading a box of decorations into the trunk. "Lucas," she said. He stopped. He didn't jump. He turned slowly, the movement controlled and fluid. When he saw her, his expression didn't shift. There was no tightening of the jaw, no flash of the pain she used to see 5 years ago. There was only a polite, devastating blankness. "Olivia," he said. "The ceremony was nice. Sophie looked happy." "She did," Olivia said, pushing off her car and taking a step toward him. She smoothed her dress, a nervous tick she hadn't been able to shake. "She looks so much like your mother now." "She has her moments," Lucas agreed, closing the trunk with a solid thud. He turned to face her fully, checking his watch. "Did you need something? We have a dinner reservation." The "we" hung in the air, excluding her. Olivia started, her voice faltering. She looked at his face, the face she had woken up next to for 10 years, the face she had traded for a thrill that had long since burned out. "I wanted to see if maybe, I don't know, maybe we could get coffee sometime? Just the two of us, to talk about the kids, to talk." She stepped closer into his personal space. She smelled the familiar scent of his sandalwood soap, mixed with the starch of his collar. It was the smell of safety. "Mark and things aren't good, Lucas. I think I made a mistake. A huge mistake." She let the words hang there, raw and heavy, waiting for him to pick them up. She expected him to yell, to tell her she deserved it, or perhaps to soften and admit he missed her too. Lucas looked at her. He really looked at her, searching her eyes. But he wasn't looking for a spark. He was looking at her like one looks at a stranger in a photograph found in an antique store, someone who once meant something to someone, but whose story has been lost to time. "Olivia," he said quietly, "I'm sorry things aren't good with Mark. Truly. I hope you find a way to be happy." But I don't drink coffee with you," he interrupted gently. "I don't hate you. I haven't hated you for a long time. I don't know you anymore. The woman I married didn't exist. And the woman standing here, I don't have a place for her in my life." "I'm the mother of your children," she whispered, tears pricking her eyes. "You are," Lucas nodded. "And you'll always be Sophie and Leo's mother. But you're not my wife. You're not my friend. You're just someone I used to know." He didn't say it with malice. That was the worst part. If he had been angry, it would have meant he still cared. It would have meant she still had power over him. But he was calm. He was whole. He had healed around the wound she inflicted, leaving no scar tissue for her to grab onto. Take care of yourself, Olivia, he said. He turned around, opened the driver's side door, and climbed in. Olivia stood frozen as the engine revved. Through the windshield, she saw Sophie turn around in the passenger seat. Sophie hesitated, then gave a small, sad wave. Lucas didn't look back. He put the car in gear and pulled away. Olivia watched the SUV merge into the line of traffic. She watched until the red lights blurred into the distance, indistinguishable from 100 others. The silence of the parking lot rushed back in, louder than the applause inside the gym had been. She looked at her phone. No messages. She looked at her empty car. She had wanted a life without consequences, a life of pure emotion. She realized now, standing under the flickering sodium street lamp, that she had gotten exactly what she asked for. She was entirely, completely free, and she had never wished more desperately to be trapped.